It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, it's ABB, baby, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is down in the description for you below, so I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links down in the description. I'd appreciate it. The Discord's been popping lately, and I'd love for you to join. But today, we're doing the other old Narset, talking today about Narset Enlightened Exile. A 4-mana 3/4 Jeskai human monk that gives all of our creatures prowess, and then whenever she attacks, we're going to exile a non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than her power from a graveyard and copy it. We get to cast the copy without paying its mana cost. This is a really fun ability because not only does it let us recast the things from our graveyard we want to cast, but we can potentially take our opponent's things as well. And since all of our creatures have prowess, this means that our creatures can get slightly bigger right in combat as we cast those things. So we're going to care about prowess, trying to give our creatures, more prowess triggers as many times as in a turn per possible. We're going to talk about ways we can make like tokens on cast. This is important because then all the tokens will have prowess, so we can potentially try to go wide and tall. And then ways to take extra combats and a couple extra turn spells just to get some added value from our big turns. And then we'll talk about some ways we can just add more value to our board in the long run. Thank you so much to my channel members. I appreciate everything you do to support the channel. If you're interested in just checking out all of our videos a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking out that link below. But all right, the fun thing about prowess is we do have other ways to give prowess to our creatures, and to note that you can have multiple instances of prowess. This is going to be the most applicable on a card like Bria, Riptide Rogue, an otter that gives all of our creatures prowess, all of our other creatures prowess, meaning that then technically all of our creatures within a Narset out will have double prowess. Bria adds the nice fun to be able to give a creature unblockable whenever we cast it on creature spell, just making sure that certain of our creatures can get in for free. Balmor kind of adds pseudo prowess in that whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, all of our creatures get +1/+1 trample. This is really nice with Narset's second ability. So if we cast an instant or sorcery already in combat, we can just give trample to our entire board, right? And then Kits is a really fun creature. So it already has prowess. So Narset's going to give us prowess, right? Double prowess. And it says for 2 mana, we can copy an instant or sorcery spell we control and do it only if Kitsa has 3 or more power. Well, Kits is going to get 3 or more power because of the prowess as soon as we cast one spell with it and Narset out, meaning we can actually copy one spell per turn, right, as soon as we can play them, leading us to get a lot of value off the things that we cast. Kenra's Spell Spirit doesn't give prowess to other people, but it has prowess. And if we flip it over to a backside, it has double prowess, meaning it could technically have triple prowess with Narset out. And already having Trample and Ward 2 means it's going to be a real threat to our opponents. And then Leonin Lightscribe gives, again, kind of pseudo-prowess like Balmor. +1/+1 to all of our creatures whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, but it also lets us do it if we copy an instant or sorcery as well, which is really big for Narset and some of the things we have in the deck. So Lightscribe kind of gives us another way to give kind of prowess to our board. But the big thing I think that matters for us are going to be these ways to make tokens. Elsha from the new set makes a bunch of monks with prowess whenever she hits a player. This is fun because then those monks would have double prowess out with Narset, which is really nice. Same thing over on Monastery Mentor. Just whenever we cast it on creature spell, we make one of those monks. And the monks are great because then they can get pretty big over the course of just 1 or 2 spells, right? 3/3, 5/5, 7/7 as we get these double prowess on them, just allowing them to become big threats. Kaikar makes a 1/1 spirit whenever we cast an on-creature spell, and we can sack those spirits for mana. I kind of like the idea of just trying to get some of these tokens in the air as well. Give them that little bit of evasion so that way they can get some damage right in on our opponents rather than relying on something like Balmor or, other than that to give them trample. Or, again, just try to have other ways to get the damage in. Third Path Iconoclast makes a soldier token whenever you cast a non-creature spell, again, going wide. And then we have a pair of new Flurry cards. Remember, Flurry's the new mechanic from the new set. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, do this. Corey Steelcutter makes us one of those monks with prowess, and we can attach the equipment to it. Otherwise, we can give a creature trample and haste with it. And then Aligned Heart, whenever we get that second spell each turn, we put a counter on it, a rally counter on it, and make a monk for each rally counter on it. What I like about this Flurry mechanic is even in the worst case that we can only cast one spell during our main phase, Narset could get us that second spell with her ability, making it so that we can have Flurry go off every turn. And Aligned Heart's one of those cards, if we can see it early, I think it can really give us a ton of value over the course of multiple turns. I think one of the things that can make Narset really fun is getting multiple combats, because Prowess isn't until end of turn. So if you can take multiple combats in the same turn, like, you already know that your creatures are going to be big, right? So things like Overpowering Attack and Relentless Assault are just going to give you one combat. But remember, if we cast them in our main phase, they go to our graveyard, right? And then they'll be usable for Narset back out of the graveyard. Something like Full Throttle can give us 2 extra combats, could lead to a fun turn where we can get our creatures in and deal some big damage. Same thing with something like Seize the Day. My thought on these extra turns or extra combat spells was to try to make them small enough that Narset with just, one Prowess trigger will be able to try to get them back out of the graveyard. Again, chaining a combat or two together to take advantage of that Prowess. Grain Train Heist is going to be a teeny bit different. It has Spree, so you have to pick an additional cost, which kind of doesn't work with Narset like we want it to. But for 4 mana, you get an extra combat. For 6 mana, you can just give them First Strike as well and a little bit of a buff, which is a nice thing. This one will probably be one we ideally will only be able to play out of our hand, whereas the rest of these we could potentially get out of the graveyard with Narset. But there's more ways that we can approach this. We're playing, I believe, 2 extra turn spells on the list, and the reason we're playing those 2 are they're extra turn spells that do not exile themselves after you resolve them. The reason that is because then Narset could cast them back out of our graveyard. We're not trying to chain extra turn spells together, at least by the definition of what bracket 4 is. I don't think taking a turn and then taking an extra turn off of Narset's ability is what they really talk about by chaining extra turns. But it is going to be a thing we see every now and then. We're playing things like Past in Flames and Will of the Jeskai on the next slide to be able to give all the spells in our graveyard flashback. This is important because we do have some cheap spells we're looking to kind of machine gun out to get some Prowess triggers in a turn. That's going to allow us to get those back. Haze of Rage is a card I saw that I think looks really fun. So for just 2 mana, you can give all your creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. Right, really nice on top of the Prowess. But you can buy it back for 2 extra mana into your turn, into your hand when you cast it, and it has Storm. Meaning that we could potentially play it multiple times, giving our creatures a bunch of buffs, right? Feel pretty good with something like Balmor to just make them huge and give them trample, right, as our creatures push through. Time Warp's the other one that doesn't exile itself. And then I thought something like the Flying Crane technique could be fun, giving all of our creatures flying and double strike. My thought here is if we play it from our hand, great. But I think it'd be fun to pitch this to a draw spell and play it for free with Narset back out of our graveyard, right, to give all of our creatures flying and double strike. I just think on the right turn with an extra combat spell, this could be particularly brutal, and I think it just fits that Jeskai aesthetic. But I think there's other things we can do to really take advantage of Narset. I love Arcane Bombardment. It's probably one of my favorite spell-slinging enchantments. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery each turn, you get to exile an instant or sorcery at random from your graveyard. Then you can copy each exiled card with Bombardment and play them for free, just getting you a ton of casts. And if we can get 1 extra combat spell or 1 extra turn spell underneath Bombardment, you can just have a ton of fun getting value every turn. Frost Cliff Siege we're mainly going to use for the bottom ability, giving all of our creatures trample and haste. That way, as we're casting spells and making tokens, right, they can get in and attack. And trample is going to really help with Prowess, because then that extra buff, right, from the Prowess is really going to matter. And then Windcrag Siege, we're really going to use for the top one, for the Mardu one, because Narset's ability is an attack trigger. Windcrag Siege can actually give us a second copy of Narset's ability. Again, probably getting us more out of our opponent's graveyards if we want to do that, start taking our opponent's things, getting real value, and trying to get multiple Prowess triggers just off Narset's ability alone, right? And that can lead to some really great scenarios. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my virtual opponent shot at Narset. I know we covered Narset a while back, but most of the time, I don't go back into them and do my homework. I try to keep them pretty fresh. And going into testing, I think there'd be some things I'd be looking at as far as ideas of where to go into. We're playing a ton of the extra combat spells. I like Surge to Victory. It's a card I've used a lot in Ovika. You exile an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. All your creatures get +X/+0 until the end of turn, where X is that card's mana value. And then whenever a creature we control hits a player this turn, we get to copy that exiled card without paying its mana cost. My thought here is could be a perfect card to go with all of our extra combat spells, just to take a bunch of extra combats with huge tokens and huge creatures. We could use the other Kai card, just allowing us to make more spirits if we want to do that. This is just indicative of more things that make tokens uncast for you to get that. And then I thought about something like Rediscover the Way. It's a card that lets you look at the top 3 and put one of them in your hand on the first 2 turns, and then whenever you cast a spell on the 3rd turn, you give a creature double strike. Could be fun to play this and then get it back out of the graveyard with Narset to do it again, right? Getting more value. The truth is, I think the slots in the deck are pretty wide open as far as what you can choose to do with them, and I think that's what makes Narset a fun idea for a commander. But let's do what we love to do on the channel most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some game scenarios and understand how do we set up our board. Here we're keeping a 3-lander without a Lionheart, Elsha, Kaikar, and Generous Gift for a little bit of removal. So I don't mind it. Here we see one of the cards we'd want to get back out of our graveyard, something like Crash Through to give all of our creatures trample. Again, not much we can do on turn 1. I think we're kind of in the same place on turn 2. It's okay. I mean, we don't need to be there yet. Bria is great. Bria is going to make for a fun scenario. So I think there's a couple different choices here. I like the idea of a Lionheart. I like the idea of Elsha. Like, truthfully, I think both are great options. We'll do Elsa, and we're going to get to scry one off of Narset because she is a monk. I like Arenicus. This could copy this. This could copy Narset. There's a lot of great options there, and another spell we could get back out of the graveyard. So here my thought is Narset. We're going to have to wait a turn to really use these guys in tandem, but I think we're going to look really good next turn. So this next turn, the land is not ideal, but we could go Aligned Heart. This has double Prowess, so it's going to be a 3/3. Narset's going to be a 4/5. And then we could cast Crash Through, giving them another Prowess trigger. That's our second spell, so this is going to get a counter and make us a monk. Giving all of our creatures trample and drawing us a card. We can play this after combat. But the nice part now is we had 2 spell casts, right? So Elsha is a 5/5. Narset is a 5/7, right? So now as we attack, this has a good chance of making us probably 3 or 4 monks this turn, right? Narset could get Crashed Through back out of the graveyard if we want to, making more monks off of Elsha, which to me just might make sense. Might as well do it. Get the card draw. We're probably going to end up making a couple more monks, right? Better for next turn, right? When we can set this up again and grow all of our monks. And then we go to our next turn, right? Play our land in. Now we've got 6 mana. Again, I love the idea of trying to get something like Bria down, but unfortunately the mana just doesn't work out this turn to get Bria in and play another spell like I'd really want to. Same thing with something like Arenicus. Like, I'd really want to play Arenicus to copy Narset. I guess I could play Arenicus to copy Narset. Narset would get the Prowess trigger. And then, it's less than. Right, it's less than her power. So I couldn't get the Narset back out of the graveyard. If I go with Angel Fire, though, Angel Fire put the counters on... I'm kind of actually thinking Elsha, right? Since she's going to make us all these monks. Now all of these guys have +2/+2 because of the Prowess, right? This has lifelink, indestructible, vigilance until end of turn. Now we could target this with Narset this turn when we attack, right? Because Narset's a 4/5. She could get the Angel Fire back out, put it on herself, right? So now we've had 2 spellcasts this turn. So all these guys are +4/+4. Elsha's +4/+4. Narset's just +2/+2. So Elsha's now, a 7/7 with trample? I mean, we probably end up getting a couple more monks, right? Gaining life, sorry, that makes the Aligned Heart go off, getting us a couple more monks. And I mean, now we're just building up this nice board state where on the next turn, you try to go for, we can try to go for the double spell again. If not, just Relentless Assault. So attack first, right? Well, I guess we'd want the cast first, wouldn't we? I guess we could Generous Gift something from somebody, and then, so they all get the Prowess trigger, and then Relentless Assault to take another combat. We untap all the creatures. I just think we're in a great shape here. These monks are just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Remember, +2/+2 each time, so this would be 3 on the first combat, 3/3s. This would be 5/5s on the second combat. Just amassing that value as we go. Let's get into playtest number 2. Even a 4-lander with Bria, Seize the Day, and Whirlwind of Thought, drawing us some cards when we cast non-creature spells. Again, we're just trying to set up our board state here. Nothing to do on turn 2. Turn 3, we can get that siege down. We have no problem doing that, giving all of our creatures trample and haste. Only because this could actually have Narset attack right the turn it comes in. It'd be a 4/4 if somebody has something in their graveyard, we get it. Otherwise, right, Narset just gets in for some good damage. And then here, like in my head, I want to cast Bria, but I just don't see a world where it makes sense. I could get the... Well, I guess Bria has haste. I'm just trying to think of how do we turn this into a double spell, and I don't see it. Unless somebody has something in their graveyard. If somebody has something in their graveyard, we just play Bria, go to attack, right? Make one of them unblockable when we cast something out of somebody else's graveyard. My thought was the Commander Sphere, which just leaves us with 3 mana, but just sets us up for more mana next turn. Maybe Narset takes something out of somebody else's graveyard. Ooh, Balmore's interesting. We could Balmore. Guess get the Whirlwind in, because Balmore has haste. We just didn't see those non-creature spells like I expected this time around. I guess we have the Seize the Day. Like we could hold back the Whirlwind of Thought, attack with Narset, maybe get something out of somebody else's graveyard, and then Seize the Day main 2 to untap this. And we could potentially cast Seize the Day again back out of it for another combat. But not as sexy this time around as far as that, so that's why I kind of want to go for the Whirlwind of Thought instead. Well, the Chromo's Will helps, especially with the lifelink, right? Bria, go to combat attack. Oh, sorry. Go to combat attack. Try to get something out of somebody else's graveyard at this point on turn 7. Main 2, play the Seize the Day. Well, I guess if we were not going to play into the Seize the Day, I think it makes more sense just a Chroma's Will main one, right? Get the extra combat, or get the big buffs now, get all the buffs around, and then we could actually get a Chroma's Will back out of the graveyard on a future turn. Kind of a sloppy playtest there. I feel like we saw things in the wrong order, but it's good to do those so that way you kind of understand, right, your sequencing. Let's get into playtest number 3, keeping a 4-lander with Infantry Shield for some mobilize, getting those tokens in whenever that creature attacks, Talisman, and Rapid Hybrid for some removal. Ooh, we see Monastery Mentor, kind of nice, right? Getting us some more monks. Here we're at Narset mana. I think we get her down. Turn 5, I'm almost thinking Monastery plus Balmore. Try to set up for a future turn. Narset could attack, but obviously we don't have anything in our graveyard. Because my thought at this turn was cast the Infantry Shield and put it on Narset. Right, because she'd be a 4/5 to get a bunch of those warriors. Just start the process of getting in to combat, making combat good. I guess conversely, we could go for like Bria. But this would get us another monk with the Mentor. Make us a couple warriors on attack, right? She would have Menace. And just kind of set us up for a turn where we can get a couple spells. Great. Now we see Ponder this turn, so we get another monk. Look at the top 3. We can shuffle and then draw. I think we'll just shuffle. But that's one Prowess trigger, right? There's the Frostcliff Siege. That's another Prowess trigger. And Monastery Mentor again. We have 1 spell, so Balmore's going off once. So that's 4. I've still got 2 mana left. I guess I'd probably just leave up that Boros Charm, right? Take the attacks this turn. I guess we could Ponder again if we want back out of the graveyard, or we could save it for next turn. But I think it makes sense just to get off here. I love the idea of something like Tigum, but I think we just kind of shuffle. And then that's another monk. 3 Prowess triggers this turn. Everything's pretty big. Now, I said it earlier before in a Mardu video, and I haven't looked yet. My understanding of Mobilize is it should check the X when it resolves. If it checks the X on attack trigger, we'll only probably make, what, 5 monks or 5 warriors this turn? But if it checks it on resolution, I believe we're up to like 7 power, 8. Well, we casted 3 spells, so we'd be up to Yeah, 7 power, so we should make 7 warriors. I gotta double check that. I will pin it when I find it out. But still, big combat. Those monks can attack right as 7/7s because of the prowess. Balmor's getting some stuff in the air. They all have trample because of Balmor. Like, this is the ideal combats we want to see. And then as we come to our turn, Jeskai Charm can get all our creatures lifelink. So now lifelink plus the trample from either Frostcliff or the Balmor means we're probably just going to gain a ton of life. And I think this is exactly the position we want to be in. Let's get one last playtest in. Keeping a 3-lander with Kitsa, Quarry Steelcutter, Frostcliff Siege, and some Faithless Looting. The thing to remember about Faithless Looting is that you get to pitch those cards into your graveyard, meaning we could potentially, right, cast them off of Narset, right? So you get to kind of pick and choose what you want in your graveyard. Do we set up the Flurry maybe for next turn? Or do we take it this turn? I'm kind of thinking we set it up for next turn, right? Play the Aligned Heart here. So I thought as this turn we could Narset, or I was going to say we could Kitsa plus Faithless Looting, trigger both of these to get the monks, and then get Narset in the next turn. I guess we could conversely also do it next turn as well. So maybe we play the Narset first. Maybe we hope into an extra mana. We don't. That's okay. I think Kitsa makes sense. That's our first spell. I kind of like the Enigma on Narset to give her unblockability. That would get us a monk off the Steelcutter and a monk off of the Aligned Heart. Again, getting the monks for future turns, right? Kitsa couldn't have copied that Enigma because although she would have been at 3 power, or 2 power right now, we can get her to 3 power this turn. She doesn't have haste. I'm kind of thinking about the Faithless Looting just to load a couple things into our graveyard. We could think about doing that and just seeing what we get, but I kind of rather leave it for a future turn where I can double spell. Narset's unblockable. She's at, 4 power unblockable? So just take the attack, right? We could recast the Enigma if we want to, but I think we could also save it as well. Coming in the next turn, I think we ideally want to try to double spell again. The Siege could be fun, right? Giving all of these monks that are about to come in haste, and then I would do the Faithless Looting. So I can copy the Faithless Looting if I want to really start getting more into our graveyard. But I kind of like the idea of the 1 from the Cutter, 2 from the Aligned Heart, and I think I'm okay to just draw and discard here once. So we draw 2, pitch 2, Crash Through could be a great thing to get back out of our graveyard. Same thing with Jeskai Charm, could just be a fun thing to get back out of our graveyard. Go to combat and attack. These 3 wouldn't have seen that was Prowess triggers. So these 4 will have seen the double Prowess triggers. These won't have seen any. So it'll be some varying powers on the board, but I think since we have Trample, it makes sense to go for something like the Jeskai Charm out of our graveyard. Give them all lifelink, and just get in for a big attack with Trample, right? Gain a bunch of life back. And then as we come to our next turn, we're really hoping for land. I guess we can Decanter, that gets us 2 mana, and we could go for something like Boros Charm. I was just trying to think, how do we Flurry before combat? Give all of our permanents indestructible. Getting 3 now off of Aligned Heart. I guess we could have copied the Boros Charm if we wanted to, well, we didn't have the mana. And then go to combat. This time I'd probably get like the Crash Through for another cast. Draw a card, give everything Trample, and these will now see their first Prowess trigger. Everything else would have seen the 3rd Prowess trigger. And again, I think you can kind of see how we're leveraging these, playing things back out of our graveyard to continue buff our board. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Narset down in the comment section below? I think this deck's really interesting. Of course, there's some things we can work out as far as consistency and testing, but if you like this idea, I think you'll find a lot of fun from it, and I would love to know what you think down in the comment section below. I'll catch you all next time.